In today's show, one big man leaves, another one enters. Ibou Badji heading for knee surgery. Jusuf Nurkic heading back to the lineup. Plus, a little optimism courtesy of the Listener Mailbag. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. Listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Free on all platforms. 5 days a week coming at you Monday through Friday. So make it part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen as Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we got a little news up top. Big man news for one Blazers young center and one Blazers veteran center. Plus, some listener mailbag questions to close the show. Talking optimism, or at least side-eyeing optimism slowly from a couple listeners. And then a Blazers Frankenstein to close the show, all Legends edition. Let's start with the news, though. The Blazers announced that Jusuf Nurkic, I guess they didn't announce it. The Blazers released their injury report, and Jusuf Nurkic has been upgraded to questionable heading into Wednesday's game against the Boston Celtics. Jusuf Nurkic had missed the previous 14 games, dating back before the All-Star break. He initially injured he's been dealing with this calf injury. He initially sustained the calf injury against the Utah Jazz on January 25th. He missed the following game, and then he came back and played against the Atlanta Hawks, and then played the 2 nights later against the Memphis Grizzlies. That was on February 1st, and he only played 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 29 seconds before that, like before he even subbed out. He just, non-contact flaring up of the injury, fouled to get himself off the court, and left and was out for a month. Had told reporters that he was eyeing a return right after the All-Star break. It didn't come back. He didn't get back right after the All-Star break, but now from out, he's missed the previous 14 games, to questionable. That typically means, that's the typical indicator of this dude's going to play. Sometimes they're more aggressive with the injury news, like with when it was clear that Gary Payton was going to play, they just took him straight up off the injury report. Everyone kind of knows what the deal is with Gary Payton's injury and the Trailblazers. So that one had a little more, maybe there was a little more heft behind him not getting the probable or questionable tag when he was returning from injury. But it was, what Jusuf Nurkic, the same way they did with Anthony Simons earlier this week. This is where he's going to warm up and try to play, and this is very likely he will return. This is a big deal. The Blazers are better with Nurk. I think Drew Eubanks has filled in admirably because he plays hard, but his limitations have been shown. Like he's a backup center, and probably on a really good team, a third center. And I've enjoyed the Drew Eubanks experience, but Portland is better with Nurk in the game, and they're better just with more size. Being able to play a center for 48 minutes it will be a big deal, particularly against two big teams they're going to play coming up Wednesday and Friday against Boston and Philly. So yeah, Nurk helps. He's a good pick and roll partner. He adds another passer. He adds just another player you can kind of I don't think you want to have a steady diet of Jusuf Nurkic post-ups. I think we've learned that over the last 4 or 5 seasons. But there are certain mismatches, certain matchups you can attack with Nurk. He helps. He absolutely will. Even with all of Nurk's faults and defensive limitations and smoked layups and turnover problems, with all of those things, he's still by far the Blazers' best center and will be an upgrade. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes he can play and what he looks like and all those things. But, the team wants to, the players playing, and I'm sure the coaching staff, they want to make the playoffs. They're making the push, and Jusuf Nurkic will help them make that push. As Jusuf Nurkic returns, another Blazer who we never got to know is likely done. Actually. Ibou Badji is headed for surgery on his left knee, and the Blazers in a press release announced that he will miss at least the next 8 weeks, or he will miss the next 8 weeks is just the language in there. Here's the thing. He's a two-way player. The next 8 weeks would put the Blazers into the second round of the NBA playoffs. Two-way players not eligible for the playoffs. So even if they shock the world and they win the first round playoff series, the Blazers, Ibou Badji, even if he's cleared to play then, will not be eligible to play for the Portland Trail Blazers. So just like that, the player we never saw is done for the season. Badji never made an appearance. Two-way player who was playing with Milwaukee's Wisconsin Herd in the G League and then signed a two-way deal with the Trailblazers. Some promise as a project big with defensive upside. Wasn't in the lineup and then had been listed as out for a long time, close to a month, with knee soreness. Typically, like a knee injury that lingers for a long time is just like sort of like knee pain. Do you want to have surgery? Just missing 8 weeks suggests that it is not like a really serious surgery. This is like some sort of like what they would call a cleanup in the sports medicine world. But Ibou Badji, the memories I will have of you are after Trailblazers wins, giving Jeremy Grant a piggyback ride off the floor, particularly when you were listed as out with a back and knee injury. Jeremy Grant jumping on your back and you carrying him off the floor. Most recently, when Damian Lillard had 71 points, Jeremy Grant jumped on Ibou Badji's back and rode around the floor for a second. Badji's big, if nothing else. He's really big. It's too bad we never got to see him in a uniform. An intriguing fellow who we just never got to know about. Bummed is probably the wrong word, but I'm a little disappointed. Just because of the curiosity. I think, it's like, as far as like Project G League-y bigs go, the Blazers, with as small as they were, would have been really curious to put a true 7+ footer in there and figure out what he can't do. So let's see those limitations in real time, but we will never get to see that. The way two-way contracts work is if the Blazers want him to be, he can be a restricted free agent. Because of his time served in the league, the Blazers could sign him to another two-way contract next year. If the Blazers would like to retain Mr. Badji and his intriguing size, they have a path to do so. He can be back, but this could be the end of a very quiet but memorable on the internet, a guy very popular on the Blazers subreddit, but maybe nowhere else. His season is done. So Nurk back Wednesday, and let's talk about those Wednesday games. I got a question from a listener about the Blazers' next 2 games, and we'll close the show with a couple questions from the mailbag. But before we do that, I want to tell you I'm excited about a new sponsor for the show. It's ultimate basketball GM, the ultimate pro basketball GM. You ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your own basketball franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for everything, like hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and then training players you acquire, making draft picks, and navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft and all the ups and downs of an NBA season. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Completely free, playable online, play on the go, and as you want, when you want to. Plus, Locked On Blazers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure you check it out. Download the game. Just visit probasketballgm.com or scan the code if you're watching here on YouTube to look it up in app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. Right. Let's get into some mailbag questions to close the show. If you want to submit a mailbag question, the way to do it is lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. That's the email address. It's the best way just to get in touch with me, period. But that's the email address to send questions. I just kind of save them and then I use them as they come. This one I got a couple emails today, and this happened to be very topical. It's just a really well-timed email. If you send an email at the right time, you're going to make the show immediately. Otherwise, I respond to something like 80% of the emails I get. And if over the course of 4 or 5 days, I will get back to you. So send me an email, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. And if you got a good mailbag question, I'll say, hey, I like this question. I'll save it for a later show, or I'll use it right away. Like in this case, I got a question from listener Andrew, who asked, is there a scenario where the Blazers win their next 2 games against the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics? Andrew did not write out the full names of both teams, but I'm adding them in there. The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Is there a scenario where the Blazers win those 2 games and change your mind about the possible outcomes for the season? Another email I got this afternoon from listener Dr. J. Not a question, but a thought on some recent episodes that indicated that seeing Cam Reddish and seeing Matisse Thybulle, who we've talked about a bunch in recent shows, you've listened, who I've talked about a bunch in recent shows, the Blazers have, throw those 2 guys in with Nazir Little and with Jeremy Grant, is the Blazers have a pretty good wing core. And if they could get healthy and get Damian Lillard back and get Anthony Simons rolling and get Nurk rolling, like they have the makings of at least a competitive basketball team because they have added the depth at the positions where they've needed depth. Still imperfect, but if you squint, Dr. J says, you can see obvious reasons to be optimistic, which leads us into Andrew's question. The Blazers play these next 2 games against the Boston Celtics and against the Philadelphia 76ers, and if they were to win both, would it change my outlook on the season? Y'all know. The long and the short answer is no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. But it would be really impressive. And because of what is happening in the NBA, the Blazers, if they just chug along, the play-in tournament is right there for them. I'm recording this on Tuesday. You are listening to Wednesday, March 8th's show. And I am recording this on pretty late at night on Tuesday, March 7th. All the basketball games in the NBA have ended. And the Utah Jazz lost. The Los Angeles Lakers won. The Warriors lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And because of that, there is an incredible logjam. The Jazz sit alone in 13th at 31 and 35. And then the Trailblazers, Thunder, and Pelicans are all 31 and 34. And the Lakers, who won tonight, are 32 and 34, just a half game up on those 3 teams that are tied for 10th place. Which means the Blazers keep chugging along like even regardless of what happens in those 2 games. I promise I'll answer the question in the second after a long preamble, as I am wont to do. Like the Blazers are a half, as just from beating 2 bad teams. With all due respect to the Orlando Magic, I think the Pistons are bad and they know it. But with all due respect to the Orlando Magic, who have been much more pesky since the calendar flipped to 2023, but the Blazers, by virtue of just beating the bottom feeders, they're a half game out of 9th. Like, they're 2 full games out of 7th, and there's a bunch of teams between them. Like I said, they're tied with the Thunder and the Pelicans and a half game behind the Lakers, and a half game ahead of the Jazz. Just chilling might get you in, like it just kind of chugging along and going, 39 and 42 that would be opting out of one of the games. Going 39 and 43 might get you the 10th seed in the West, right? Like it really might. I think you're going to have to win more than half of your games to finish in that 7-8 range. But like 9-10 is probably going to be a team with a losing record in the Western Conference. It just is what it is, and it is crowded there with Portland and the Thunder and the Pelicans, who just can't get right, and the Lakers, who are better but can't get healthy, and the Clippers won't quite run away and hide. They finally won a basketball game with Russell Westbrook on the roster, but like that bottom tier of the West is right there waiting for them. But the question isn't like, is it still possible for them to get where they want to go? The question is, would my opinion of their outcome change if they beat 2 of the good teams, right? And these are the good teams, to be clear. Milwaukee, by virtue of just ripping off 18 of 20, they're 2.5 games ahead of the Celtics. The Celtics are in second place in the East. The Sixers are in third. That's Wednesday night in Boston, Friday night in Philly. 2 really good teams. Joel Embiid is, he's probably going to finish second or third in the MVP race. If he doesn't, he's not going to win it. But second or third in the MVP race, like he's one of the truly great players of his generation. The Celtics are really good. And Jason Tatum missed the last game, but Joe Mazzulla said that he's likely to be back for the Blazers game on Wednesday. And if they're whole, that's a team that can win the title without a doubt. Like they played in the finals last year, and for a big stretch of the season, that's the best team in the NBA. These are really, really, really good teams. And if they were to win back-to-back, it would be the first time the Blazers had beaten two good teams in a row. I mean, it was like they haven't beaten a truly good team since February 1st against Memphis with the night that Nurk got hurt. It's been a long time when they've just kind of where you can point to a game and say that is a really good win. They've had some entertaining wins for sure, but like where you say they beat a good team, okay, this might be something. If they were to do it once, I would say, oh, that's a really nice win. If they were to do it twice, I would first of all, I'd be bummed that it was a Friday night game, so we couldn't celebrate here on the podcast together, and we'd have to wait through another game against New Orleans on Sunday to get there. But it would be exciting, and I don't think it would change my perception of what they are. Right? I still think this is a team that cannot win a playoff series. Because talent wins in the league, and I don't think the Blazers have enough talent right now. Their biggest problem remains lack of high-end talent. Their second through fifth best player just aren't quite good enough yet. Jeremy Grant's good, and every time is good, and Jusuf Nurkic's pretty good, and it's like, but to win 4 out of 7 in these Western Conference playoffs when you get there, there's some good teams. I guess there's a world in where I think the Blazers could beat the Kings or whatever. If the Kings finish second and the Blazers can somehow end up 7th. That would take a lot. It would take a lot. And I guess there's a world where the Grizzlies are not whole, and you could talk yourself into it, right? But that's you're really pushing down the line there, right? You're really getting deep into the weeds to imagine you facing the Grizzlies as the 6th seed or whatever. That is not realistic. So it would not change my overall outlook on the season, right? I would say, wow, those are really good wins. Those are really impressive. But my view is this on the NBA. The season is too long, but it is also mostly a meritocracy that tells us the truth about these teams. Every year, somebody does what the Suns did last year, and they win too many games in the regular season, and then they face a team that they don't match up well with, and they're not healthy, and they're bad matchup, and long season, and maybe they expended too much energy, and they just get embarrassed, upset. Not every team gets embarrassed. The Suns specifically got embarrassed, but that happens every year, right? Is a top seed that was really good in the regular season gets kind of exposed and doesn't make it as far as you thought they would. But for the most part, the teams that win titles are excellent during the regular season. The regular season is point differential during the 82 game regular season is the best indicator of who could win a title. And the Blazers, for the most part this year, have had the point differential of a mediocre team, slightly below average to an average NBA team. And that's kind of what they are. You can't fake the funk. The first 65 games, they tell you the truth. And so while these 2 games would be really fun and I would enjoy them, and I might even come on this podcast and say some irresponsible things if the Blazers beat the Celtics, because I like having fun on the show. My actual real perspective is that all of the other games before this, the 65 games prior to the game they played against the Celtics are much more indicative than what they'll be on Wednesday night. That said, they haven't had Jusuf Nurkic for a month. You get Jusuf Nurkic back. You get Matisse Thybulle in the mix. Cam Reddish has been playing well in his minutes for the Blazers. If Nazir Little starts to keep shooting well, the Blazers can comfortably play a 9-man rotation. They've been playing 8 the last 2 games. Comfortably play 9 guys, which will help. I think you could start to, as Dr. J said, squint and see the makings of a more talented roster because the wing core has been upgraded with a little bit of size, albeit maybe with less offensive juice. But Cam Reddish is playing well enough to kind of make you forget the offensive juice they sent to New York City in the form of Josh Hart. So, the obvious answer to this question is what I sent Andrew in the email when I responded back. It's no, this won't change my opinion. But it would be a much needed win, and it would be maybe your ability to squint and say, you know what? They're healthy now, and the work that they've put in, kind of scuffling without Jusuf Nurkic and adding these new parts, yeah, I'm starting to talk myself into it. And then you look at the Western Conference standings and you say, listen, they're not I don't have dreams of fifth anymore. I don't have dreams of fifth place or whatever, but it is not unrealistic to think this team could be in 8th or 9th place, no problem. Like particularly 9th. Like 9th is right there for them. Like a hosting one of, they have to win 2 play-in games to get into the playoffs, but hosting a play-in game when you have Damian Lillard, that's a path to the postseason. Is that what I think they should do? No, of course not. But I think that is totally within the realm. And even if this wouldn't change my opinion, it would be useful in the sort of proof of concept type of stuff you want to see from this team as they head into the offseason and figure out what they're going to do from here. Winning some games and showing that this group might work, and these are the things that you would need to add to this group, the parts you need to add to this group. I think there's value there, even if the opinion of some silly podcaster does not change. Okay, another question. We've got Trailblazers Frankenstein to close the show. But first, let me tell you about FanDuel. Listen, we're closing on the stretch run of the NBA season. It's here, baby. We're in the final. Everyone's got in their final 20 games, the push to the playoffs. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance. Get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Thanks to Andrew and Dr. J for sending me questions. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com is my email address. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com, because I didn't ask Eric for the Locked On Blazers Gmail password. So if you're sending them there, my man Eric, the host back in the day prior to 2019, he is currently not reading those emails. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com to send me a mailbag question, just like listener Jane did. First time emailer Jane sends a question that sends the following question. Again, this is edited. What do they say when they do Q&As? Lightly edited for clarity. Can you build a perfect Frankenstein player from former Blazers to help the 2023-2024 team win the title? The idea being that you take skill sets from former Blazers to build yourself the perfect Blazer to help you win the title. This is believe it or not, I have had a question similar to this in the past, like an amalgamation of Blazers. I also get all the time, this is like the classic mailbag question, which former Blazers player would you add to the team? And there's like, which former Blazers player that never made an all-star game, which former Blazers player that, like, there's like caveats, but they're all like, which former Blazers player? But this is, and this is kind of, I've had something like this, but a true Frankenstein, Trailblazers Frankenstein, building the perfect player, the ideal player to add to next year's roster to help them win a title. And to make this simple, like in the past, I've said like, oh, I would add Stacey Augmon for defensive versatility. Oh, I would add Cliff Robinson because of the shooting and his ability to play 3, 4, and 5. Or I would add Rod Strickland because he's one of the most underrated Blazers players of the 90s. Or, but like the answer to this question always is Clyde Drexler, right? Like, which Blazers player would you add to the roster? You'd add Clyde. You just add the best player. Like, it's pretty simple. You would always do that, and then you would add like peak Bill Walton. They might do that in reverse order, but like peak Bill Walton and Clyde Drexler, like you'd add the best players. So in honor of like my logic is like, it's a talent-based league, add the most talent. I'm building an all-goats Frankenstein. That means all of the Blazers greats into the Frankenstein. And we'll start with Clyde. We're going to add Clyde slashing to the mix. Clyde's ability, to go end-to-end with his head down and just to get to his spots. Is like he was a superstar, could truly get to his spots. I didn't live on this coast in the Clyde Drexler era. Like he was not the basketball stars I grew up with. I'm a little young too to like truly appreciate like prime Clyde from the 80s. But like even by the time he was playing in the NBA Finals, again, a little too young and literally on the wrong coast. Games are on too late at night. So Clyde Drexler is not like the player of my childhood, just like full disclosure. But I am steeped enough in Blazers history and appreciative enough to know that this is almost certainly the most talented player that's ever worn a Blazers uniform when you consider how little Bill Walton played. You add Clyde's slashing ability, Clyde's scoring ability, Clyde's ability to get to the rim. That's the first thing you're going to add. Then you're going to add Terry Porter's shooting. Terry Porter's a little ahead of his time in terms of shooting. He finalist in three-point contest. He was, he was up there in all-time leader in three-point shots before the incredible boom. And it's like below Rudy Fernandez now. It's like, I don't think he's that far down, but it's like, it is the game's changed. And if TP played in this era, he would be a bomber, right? Like he would be the point guard that shot it off the dribble and all those things. His moxie shooting the ball and his marksmanship shooting the ball. I'm adding that along with Clyde's rim pressure ability, the ability to finish above the rim, ability to get to your spots, ability to get into the paint, and that coast-to-coast skill that the Blazers are missing. All GOATs addition. That's why the next thing I'm adding is Arvydas Sabonis' passing skills to this Trailblazers Frankenstein. Young Sabonis is really the one of the great what ifs. I did actually a whole series of what ifs. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast, in the summer of 2020 when there was no basketball, I did a series of what ifs, and I was trying to do like off beat ones, and I didn't do young Sabonis, but young Sabonis is the big one, right? Like if he comes over, in 85, if he comes over, but really if he comes over in 88, when the like sort of first wave of European stars started coming over. He comes in 88, the Blazers are multi-time champions. Like you add him to that roster, multi-time champions. It's probably the argument that Arvydas Sabonis was the best basketball player in the world at one point. By the time he got here, he was old. He'd played a lot of miles, a lot of beat up knees, and he still played a long time at a high level, even for the Blazers once he finally arrived. And his passing ability was otherworldly. Like he's before Nikola Jokic existed, this is the greatest passing big man of all time. I think Jokic has pretty clearly passed him in terms of volume and creativity and all those things. But Vitas, he's not your Vitas, he's our Vitas. You're getting his passing skills because he's that special. On the other side of the ball, I want the defense and timing instincts of Bill Walton because it's all GOATs, baby. It's all GOATs. Walton was, for a brief period, the best player in basketball. No one who's ever worn a Trailblazers jersey has that claim. You beat Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the finals. You win an MVP and lead a team to a 50-10 start in 60 games before the injury that derailed his whole Blazers career. Very brief, but very bright. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see right behind me the Bill Walton poster of him smelling the roses, wearing a Clippers uniform. It went the other way quickly, but the defensive instincts, the timing, in some ways, just like the selflessness of Bill Walton, the ability to like be a star and not be a high level scorer, like the best player on the court and not a really high level scorer, but blocking 8 shots in an NBA Finals game. Give me that on your perfect Blazer, and then I will take an intangible. When I was dreaming this up, I wanted some skills and I wanted an intangible. And I'll take the ruggedness of Maurice Lucas. I think one of the things that this particular Blazer team is missing is a little bit of just like, I was going to say a bad word, a little bit of nasty, to quote Greg Popovich. I censored myself. Send that clip to David Locke. You're welcome, David. I'm learning. The ruggedness of Maurice Lucas is what I'd like to add to this Trailblazers Frankenstein. I think, the ability to just or the willingness to square up with Daryl Dawkins and say, let's go, let's fight right here, let's do it. I think the Blazers are missing a little bit of that attitude, and adding, one of the all-time greats, the all-time great enforcers, the enforcer, Mo Luke, to the Frankenstein mix is really special. And I'm building this Frankenstein. In the mold of LaMarcus Aldridge, young LaMarcus Aldridge. The LaMarcus Aldridge of 2011, when he started to dunk everything. very, very briefly started to dunk everything. There was that stretch. That was 2010, rather. The stretch of January in 2010 when he just dunked it all. He dunked it all, and he was getting lobs and throwing everything down, and he was with Andre Miller in tow, he became the monster you had always wanted him to be since he joined up in 2006, and since it really became his team following Brandon Roy's injuries. That stretch of LaMarcus Aldridge, that brief period where he was still super, super athletic, he could still really shoot, he was still 6'10" with long arms. That's the mold I want. So a LaMarcus Aldridge frame with the Clyde Drexler's end-to-end slashing ability, Terry Porter shooting, Arvydas Sabonis' passing, the defensive instincts and timing of Bill Walton, and the ruggedness of Maurice Lucas. That's your all GOATs Frankenstein. If you have a Blazers Frankenstein, send me the theme and send me who you would add to LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. Portland plays the Boston Celtics tomorrow. They're move right back into the play-in picture with a win. Friday, they play the Philadelphia 76ers. That means Thursday's show, we will talk about the Celtics game. And on Friday's show, we will look ahead to the weekend with games against Philly and New Orleans on the horizon. We do this Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. So make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.